I would like to invite Daniel to join us. So let me just share a little information about, I don't have that. So Daniel is the famous economist. You will see that he doesn't have any presentations. Everything you need to know, either write down or remember, but he's a charismatic person on stage, so I'm sure that you will be very, very interested to know what he has to say. What's coming up? The presentation is it good news and bad news? Daniel, are you delivering us the good or the bad news today?
Just wait and listen. Thanks, Marina. Thank you.
Just keep it here.
Yeah, I've been with you before in the past and always enjoyed it, and hope you do as well. I always carry a pullover around with me because I have no blood circulation, but that's another story. I think I've got 25 minutes. Oh, 30 minutes it says here, so I'll steal the extra 5 minutes. Great. Danny Thornley, I work with 250, 300 global corporations in different sectors, including hospitality. Today I've got a big remit, global, Russia, CE, and so forth. Global business economy may be better than you expect. Global geopolitics is very hairy, scary. Russia is a concentration camp run by a concentration camp guard called Vladimir Putin, who murdered Katerina Rostropova in August. She was a stewardess on Prigozhin's plane. Oh, by the way, there'll be an investigation held by the Russian authorities about the plane crash, and it will discover there was a technical fault for the mid-air crash. These are very rare. Or it might be pilot error. Maybe the pilot was drunk or something. It was the most convenient airline crash in the history of avionics. Let's leave it at that. But first, you're a very bright, intelligent, sophisticated audience. If I was there, I'd be worried now, thinking, what the hell happens next? I have a question, but don't worry, it's not, Jean-Louis, what's the answer? Get out, naughty boy, you don't know the answer. Just in your head, I have a question. How much stolen money is in the world today? Let me explain. I can't do Italy and Belgium, I don't have enough fingers to count, but emerging markets, the third world, how much money has been stolen from those countries, deposited mostly in Western banks, accumulative. So, and I'll help you. Is it 500 billion? Is it 1 trillion? Or is it 3 trillion? And you've got 4 seconds to answer it in your head. And the answer is 42 trillion. IMF, World Bank. I think the number is massively wrong, way too low. By the way, I tricked you with a question, didn't I? I'm planning a career in politics. So, yeah. So, kleptocracy and theft is one of the biggest drivers in the world of why things happen. That's why I mention this. The Prigozhin mutiny in Russia in the summer, no one spoke. It was a day of silence. Putin must be very worried. No one spoke. The tank brigade was advancing on Moscow. The head of the FSB, the head of the military, the head of the GRU, no one spoke because they were all frightened to death. I have 9 penthouse apartments in Dubai, 400 million in Credit Suisse in Zurich. If Prigozhin wins, what happens to my money? If Putin wins, what happens to my property? I'll do nothing. I'll wait and see. That's on that one day how kleptocracy defined that. By the way, Vladimir Putin is the world's biggest personal thief, and that is a very competitive position. 400 billion we think he has stolen for himself and his family. The Russian regime has looted 7 trillion from Russia since 2000. This is the context I want to give you. Let me switch, though, to the world, the global economy. I believe, go with me or not, that a year ago, preparing for 2023, many companies, publicly owned ones, said, oh God, 23, recession, downturn. Ooh, we need to manage costs, fire staff quickly. manage the bottom line. It's going to be a roller coaster and it's going to be difficult. I doubted it and it wasn't. So for the numbers for 23 and 24 is going to get better, the industrial companies, and I'm sorry, I don't read out tons of numbers to you, but the industrial countries this year, 2.4, United States, 1.4 to 1.8, the good old Eurozone, 0.8 to 1.0, China collapses to 4.5, Poland, and I'm going to come back to Central Europe, Poland 1 and Turkey 2.5. The point I want to make, every number I gave you there was positive, and every number I'm going to give you for 24 would be as positive or better, because I think 24 is going to be a better year, certainly for Central Europe, where it's not been too bad. So I think those companies overreacted. They lost market share, they lost reputation, they lost loyalty with staff, and so forth. Also, on the global economy, if things are so bad, if there's a recession coming, if you don't feel happy in your company, why do all of us face a war for talent? In every market in the world, 90% of you, in 90% of the markets where you operate, you face a war for talent. Good, skilled people. Latin America, Africa, Western Europe, Central Europe, even Russia, Middle East, Southeast Asia, is a war for talent. And you cannot have a recession and a war for talent at the same time. So something's wrong, and my point is the recession isn't really there. Not soft, not easy peasy, all the usual stresses that you face are there. But by the way, since I cover many sectors, consumer products, industrials, IT, services, and so on, let me say the following. Hospitality, tourism, travel, transportation is one of the very good places to be with pharma and health. So you're in the right industry. And as I'll point out and prove to you soon, Central Europe is the place to be. So what can be wrong? You're in the right industry, in the right geography. So double your budgets for 2024 is my advice. Yeah. Depends, by the way, if I'm with CEOs, I'll work for you and say, oh, it's going to be a bit difficult next year. You need to, keep the budgets realistic and manage expectations. By the way, the key to success in one's sex life, sorry, I'm going off course here. How did that arrive? Right, the key to success in one's sex life, as in one's business life, is, as you know, managing expectations. Invariably downwards. So, I see you have many business experiences, sir, just like me. Good. So, and the other big geopolitical global thing, of course, is China, and that takes me to Central Europe in a way. China is not where it was. You're de-risking, decoupling, or if you're Starbucks and McDonald's, you're investing in China. But you're not doing it with as much confidence. There is concerns and threats and so forth. So, we've got Russia, and I'll come back to that in a second. I follow it closely. Russia is down and out and not sustainable for business. And I would argue for the hotel industry as well, by the way. China is not what it was, so you're looking for alternatives. Your board, your CEO, and you. Where do we go geographically? Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, yeah. India, great place. Very difficult to do successful business, though, for many sectors. CIS, yes, there's growing interest there. Turkey, if Erdogan gets his game right, and he seems to be becoming slightly more rational, slightly less mad than he was, then Turkey could be very, very interesting, and I know it is interesting for the hospitality industry. So Turkey is key and important. And then Central Europe. I have clients, Meta, Facebook, Borg Warner Industrials. 2 out of 50 companies have said the following. We've left Russia, which represented 20-25% of our EEC business, and within a year, we've recouped lost business in Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia by coming to the major Central European markets and adding on Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, Montenegro and others. Double track policy. I'm not saying it's easy, you know, let's go to Poland. That's an easy market. You know how competitive and tight it is. But it's certainly working as an alternative. And again, it comes back to my point, which I will elaborate in a moment. I first went, that's the world in a little snapshot. I first went to the Soviet Union on the 4th of May, 1978. My doctoral thesis is in Soviet political economy, 1927 to 37, 37 году, if any Russians are in the room. 37 is the year that Joseph Stalin really started to murder and butcher his own Communist Party, as well as murdering millions of others. I spent 40% of my time until the 22nd of February last year. When I left Russia, we had a conference in the Kempinski, the Balchuk Kempinski, the Atrium Room, 140 companies. Dyson was on the platform and said Russia is the best market in the world for our company. Dyson has now left Russia. That's just a typical thing. I will never go back to Russia in my lifetime under any feasible scenario that I can see. Some numbers. I can get quite emotional about this if I want to, and I'll try and control it. Why do I get emotional? Back to some numbers. I won't put it forward as questions to you, but I'll give you some numbers. They're very difficult to get hold of. This is not racist, Western, anti-Russian propaganda by a transgender paedophile. Right. If you watch Первый канал, I would be. Первый канал is the BBC of Russia. That's another story. But how many Russian troops have been killed in Ukraine since the war started? Best case estimate of crunching the numbers is 95,000 dead. Ukrainian soldiers dead, 65,000 because they've been attacking less. Mutilated Russian soldiers, 140,000. Lost leg, lost arm, lost foot, lost hand, lost face, lost part of belly. Ukrainian soldiers, 100,000. So we're looking at 350, 400,000 dead, mutilated for life men. 6 million, 7 million migrated people in and out of the country, and 55 to 125,000 Ukrainian women raped. These are facts. Now, those numbers, you might say, oh, Danny, you know, it's impossible those numbers are correct. I'll give you a number that we know factually to be correct. It's not estimates. How many because it can be tracked by radar and satellite. How many artillery shells has Russia fired at Ukraine in the war every day? Artillery shells from Russia to Ukraine, from Donbass into Ukraine, per day. The answer is 23,000 average. Last summer, they were firing 45,000 shells per day. Russia has fired 15 million artillery shells at Ukraine since the war started. On and on and on and on. Also, though, if you love Russia and if you love Ukraine, then your heart is broken. Just very quickly, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the famous Russian humanist and thinker, on the Friday before the mutiny, he said the following on social media, and this is critical. You can check this up. Prigozhin said, in summary, the invasion of Ukraine was never justified. There was never any NATO threat. NATO was never going to attack Russia, nor was Ukraine. He said, secondly, the invasion of Ukraine was necessary and defined to loot, to steal the Ukrainian economy, because back to kleptocracy, because the Russian regime has stolen all of Russia, they've stolen all of Donbass, and now they need to steal all of Ukraine. I was reading this with my wife over my shoulder. She's not often over my shoulder reading with me, by the way. And I just turned to her and I said, this is a dead man. Now, of course, the next day he engaged in a mutiny, and then a few weeks later he engaged in a gentleman's agreement with Vladimir Putin. and a few days after that, there was that technical fault on his aeroplane. There we are. I think the best source is the Godfather books and films for this. And just a last little point to show, you might be thinking, Marina's invited the wrong guy for this presentation. You know, he's over the top on Russia. I don't do PowerPoint. I never have, and I never will. But I'm not on film. This is my PowerPoint slide. There you are. You can see I've read it. I've highlighted it. It's the Economist magazine. I think some of you know the Economist magazine, and it's respected. Gloves are off. This is the leader after the week after Wagner. Whether Mr. Putin's fall comes soon or in months, he stands revealed as a blunderer. He is not so much a Tsar as simply the top thug in the hollowed-out gangland to which he has reduced Mother Russia. An encapsulation of everything that is despicable about Russia. And Putin, by the way, when he goes, we will have a window of opportunity for a couple of weeks. The regime is a regime, kleptocratic, embedded, complicit in the murder, and war crimes don't go away. So what I'm saying is, don't be deluded thinking there'll be a peace treaty soon and a ceasefire soon. He's annexed 4 parts of Ukraine. That's non-negotiable either side. And then you have the war crimes. So very, very dark times ahead. My personal assessment, which you can take or leave, is the war will continue for 2, 3, 5, 7 years. The alienation between the West and Russia will last 25 years. And the mutual hatred between Ukraine and Russia will last 250 years or 12 generations. Congratulations, Putin. I got my emotions out of the way, and on the business side, as I say, for all these reasons and the weakening ruble, the profitability of the market is different. Now, change tone, change attitude, get the audience smiling again, talk about Central Europe for 14 minutes. It is remarkable how counterintuitively Central Europe has responded to the war and impacts. One would have expected a year and a half ago a massive negative impact on all aspects of everything, and it has not happened. The mood, the vibrancy, Czechs, Slovaks, Poles are telling me the attitude of the world to us has changed. Central Europe is now punching above its weight, we say in boxing. It's stronger. The Balts, the Poles, the Czechs, they can turn to the Americans and French and Germans and say the 4 most beautiful words in the English language. I told you so. They were right about Putin. The others were wrong about Putin. They were right about Russia, the others were wrong. This means now that Poland and Central Europe plays a bigger role in geopolitics within the European Union, within the United Nations, and when the gingerhead man might come back in America, and I'll leave that to the end, the Poles may have a role to play on that one as well. But the whole mood, now whether that mood lasts forever or even for another couple of years is an open question. But I'll come to that in my closing remarks. Central Europe, as I say, the self-assurance. I speak with 2 or 3 executives a day. Well, before my semi-retirement, it used to be 10 executives a day. Now 3 or 4 a day. 95% tell me Central Europe is the best region in the world for our company. Honestly, this is not baloney. And this has been for 10 years, because from 2013 until now, the region has been outperforming and doing well. By the way, on sales, and pick all sectors, Procter & Gamble last year, they grew normally they grow 2.5, 2.8. Local revenue top line, okay? Last year they grew 14.5%. Procter & Gamble's management in the region must be geniuses. Well, not really. They raised prices. That's what they did in 21 and in 22. They raised prices. Inflation in the region, as you know, was 8, 10, 15, 16 in the most. Hungary was even more, etc. They raised prices to compensate. The consumer absorbed them, and generally they did very well. So that's how that worked. This year, inflation, consumer prices are coming down. They're still sticky. I'm not whitewashing. Central European inflation will still on average be 4 at the end of the year, 4, 6, 8, 8.8 kind of thing, and then coming down more in 25. So you still have some inflation issues. However, it means your pricing policy for all companies will be more sensitive and softer and lower. So you're not going to be, I advise you not to raise prices at 15%, but look at 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, whatever is happening in your sector. The other point, your costs, producer prices, the stuff you buy, metal, timber, whatever you need, property, property's a different one, sorry. But the inputs that you generally need for business are coming down in price. Producer prices in Central Europe today are negative. So it's got to be impacting you somewhere. I'm not, again, whitewashing and saying all your costs are going to disappear this year, next year. I am saying they're going to be a lot cheaper than 2020, 21, and even 22. So that's a plus side as well when you're bearing these things in mind. GDP this year in Central Europe was a bit soft. 0.5, 1 kind of thing. The Western companies, the investors in these companies, outperform the macroeconomics. Almost GDP. Who cares about GDP? We're raising our prices 10%. The consumer absorb it. In 23 and 24, maybe the consumer will absorb it a little bit less. Maybe their resilience is less strong. Let's see. The other key factor as well coming forward is, so important, real wages. This is wages after inflation. Central Europe has been bloody fantastic for 10 years. Real wages after inflation positive, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. Britain, 0. Germany, 0. America, 1. So that explained, in large part, why many companies did well. People had money and they spent it with you. It's not rocket science, is it? Now, with higher inflation, though, for the last 10 months, real wages in Central Europe have been in Poland, 0. That's not bad. Hungary, -3. Czechoslovakia, -5, -7, -8. The good news is they're turning positive today. September, October, November, real wages start picking up again, so that will be another positive moving forward. Another positive for this region, EU funding. Latin America doesn't get EU funding because it's not part of the EU yet. Neither does Britain, but don't tell them. They still think we're in the EU or we're 51st state of America, whatever we are anyway. So that EU funding is very strong. And like SAP, Oracle, they say Central Europe is a great market. We're doing business to consumer, business to business, business to government, etc. And very importantly, what was said before, interest rates are coming down. They went up to 5, 6, 7%. Wow. Inflation, 12, 13, 14, interest rates, 5, 6, 7. Interest rates are starting to come down. The Polish central bank reduced them the other day. You will see that as a trend. They'll come down from an average of 5 to 7 to 4 to 6, and then maybe a little bit lower in 2025. So another good thing in the right direction. Foreign currency, I love to say those words, I told you so. By the way, when I get anything right, I remind you, and I'm going to remind you now. If I get anything wrong, we ignore it because it never happens. Exchange rates. Every time I'm with you, I tell you, Central European currencies are strong and good. And all of them, the zloty, leu, forint, crown, even the forint, thanks to higher interest rates, have all been good, stable, steady, strong against the euro for 3, 5, 7 years. Look at the charts going back, and the forecasts going forward are manageable. For CFOs, there's not a big challenge here on exchange rates either. Politics. Politics are not as good as I would have wanted them to be. I expected the Poles with the war. They took the right decision. They supported Ukraine massively. Whatever happens in the October elections, they will continue to do so. I'm disappointed that when the Poles look at the map, Poland's somewhere in the middle there usually, yeah? On the right, you've got a mad, butchering, murdering fascist. And on the left, in Brussels, you've got a bureaucrat called Jean-Louis. And they have to choose, who is our biggest enemy? Is it the Mad Butcher of Moscow, or is it Jean-Louis with his filing cabinet? Poland's relations with EU are disappointingly tense. I would have hoped they'd improved more, and I do hope that whatever government wins, and it could be a close call with a coalition coming up, of course, as you well know, let's see. Orban in Hungary is a different kettle of fish, as we say in English. Orban has an interesting strategy. Back to kleptocracy, by the way. He gets billions of euros from Europe, steals them for his family and friends who played football with him when he was a boy, turns on the European Union and people, Jean-Louis, spits in their face and calls them dirty homosexual paedophiles and says, by the way, do you have another billion for me? It's an interesting business model. I've never tried it myself, but it seems to work. But question mark, how sustainable is that? And when and how will the EU and Hungary get better relations? And we have the elections coming up in Slovakia. Just a little point on the hotel industry, because as I say, hospitality, I do follow it. You are in the lucky position that consumers, tourism, regional after COVID is picking up. Consumers now want services and experiences rather than products. That's certainly having there. Excess savings after COVID were massive. Consumers have spent a lot, but there's still a fair bit left. By the way, excess savings because of COVID represented about 10% of Central European GDP in 21. Now it represents about 2%. 2% though is better than zero. So they've spent a lot, which explains why Procter & Gamble had 14% growth, could raise their prices, but you've still got a little bit left, a nice little bit left. More projects, and we're just hearing over coffee, are more equity than financing, given interest rates and credit terms. Will that change with interest rates now coming down? I'm not sure, because I don't think personally the change in interest rates were that massive either. The good point's been made to me by industry officials and experts. Czech and Slovakia are much more conservative government policies and fiscal and monetary policies. And what I have been told, please take it or leave it, opportunities for expansion in Czechoslovakia may be a bit more sluggish than other markets. Maybe. That does apply to consumer products because real wages were lower, fiscal spending was tighter in these markets. So Czech and Slovakia, I'm not taking them out of the good story message, not at all, but we have seen that as well. The industry, people I'm talking with, the major hotel chains are optimistic. They performed well in 22. They were pleasantly surprised by 23, surprised by Q4 last year, pleasantly surprised by Q1 this year, and so on, planning for expansion. Also planning for expansion outside the capital cities, Prague and Budapest, not much of a no-brainer, but where do you go next? And then where do you go next is another option as well. That takes me to one business point. In the business world, I believe the following. For 10 years, and for 10 years in the future, luxury is going to do well because the super luxury people always buy. Premium, sub-premium has survived and done well. And if you're not in, this is PowerPoint as well now. Premium is super good here. And the other sector that's good is cheap, promo, discount, own label. So top is okay, bottom is good. Fight your battles there. Which means, of course, the middle. Mid-range, mid-price, mid-brand is I'm on screen now, God. Is awful, generally. By the way, Bayersdorf have said to me, Danny, agree 100% with you, except for Nivea. Nivea, everybody in the room knows what Nivea is, because Nivea is a mid-brand. Whirlpool say, Danny, agree with you totally, except on Hot Point washing machines. Hot Point are mid, and we sell them very well. But you're also a bit right, because to sell Hot Point takes so much time and energy and sweat and tears to get it right. So there. My thinking, and you may or may not agree with this, I believe the hospitality sector is so good at the moment that premium and luxury are doing well. The cheaper products down there are doing well as well. And also, am I right, am I wrong, even the mid-range mid-brand is not under as much pressure as chocolates, toothpaste, detergents, and so on. Because you have such a shift and move towards leisure, travel, new experiences. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I think I'm at least half right, and we'll find out in the future, and I'll remind you if I get it right, and if I've got it wrong, I'll never bring up the topic again. The gingerhead man. Trump has a 90% chance of winning the Republican nomination, and in polls today and yesterday, he's running 50-50 with Joe Biden. By the way, one of the issues, I'm coming into my last minute, I'm going to steal 40 seconds and then I'll stop. Which penitentiary prison will he be in? Because if he's in Sing Sing or San Quentin, they're on the East Coast, and the time zone would be convenient for conversations with NATO partners and so on. By the way, on the online conversations from his prison cell, it's going to be tricky because he'll be wearing an orange suit with his orange head. I hope it's not an orange background. You won't be able to see him or anything. Whereas if he's in a prison in San Francisco oh, sorry, I forget, leave it. He's an indicted sexual abuser. He's a convicted sexual abuser. And the jury was in abeyance whether he was a rapist. So hallelujah, the former president of America has not yet been proven a rapist, but is going to court for that. You can be president of the United States while you are being indicted. You can be president of the United States by being a convicted criminal. However, something to watch. The state indictments against him by the state of Georgia cannot be rescinded, and he cannot pardon himself if he were president. So recently, would you believe, Trump's lawyers tried to say, we want that moved to federal courts, and they were knocked down on it. 2 key points for you, please, just in finishing off for the geopolitics of the world. With globalization, we took our eye off the ball of geopolitics. If Trump comes in, he's going to sort out the Ukraine war in one day. He will sell Ukraine to Putin for golf franchises in northern Siberia. By the way, Trump's so stupid he wouldn't know you can't play golf in northern Siberia, but what does it matter? One point, though, more seriously. When he's tried to sell Ukraine to the Russians, what about the Ukrainians? The Ukrainians are never going to stop fighting, never. The Balts, the Poles, the Czechs, the Belgians, the Dutch, and the British will help them. You then face the scenario where you get those countries here where Trump's America is off-field, and Germany and France are playing comme ci, comme ça, mon cher ami Vladimir. Can I have some cheap gas, please? That split is what Putin has been working on for 25 years. I am of the belief that the CIA, the Pentagon, MI6, Sécurité, and everybody else will go to the president and his advisors and say, we cannot have a split. This is impossible. This would be the end of everything. And also, Donald, we need those goddamn Europeans. We need NATO for the big one, the rivalry with China. We need support and allies. So I think it might not be so bad. And my last point about the future of America, which is not a good and bad one. Trump wins, personal fascist dictatorship. Can the American institutions and the Supreme Court hold? I don't know. You have your opinions on that. There is a scenario, and wait for it, Adolf Hitler, Germany, 1933. United States of America, with Trump, the fascist and fascist systems, but the economy, Apple, Google, Wall Street, Dow Chemical, they'll still be functioning, I presume. America's economy is strong and resilient. You could get, I don't advocate this and I don't want it, Germany, 1933, Hitler, good economy, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, Hitler and a good economy. Then, of course, he went to war and everything changed, as with Putin. We could be in the very awful situation where we have fascist Trump and a functioning US economy. How we balance that, I don't know. Putin's invasion of Ukraine is the biggest existential threat to universal and human values in your lifetimes and for your children and for our grandchildren. If in any way he wins or is perceived to win, it will show that the law of the jungle is the system for our future and for your children, and it will show that the philosophy of Macht ist Recht, might is right, is what your children and our grandchildren will live through. I hope and pray that will not happen. Fingers crossed. Godspeed. Thank you.